So, welcome in Rebirth of Communism with Bojan Stanislavski, redactor of the Barricade channel on YouTube, Sit Internet, and what? And today we will speak about the subject of the Polexit. 1 week ago, there was a very big demonstration in Warsaw. This demonstration was organized by the Donald Tusk. Donald Tusk, who was prime minister, and after he was a very important person in European Union. Now he came back to Poland and wants to take power again. And he organized this demonstration that we Poland don't want to go leave European Union. So Bojan, could you say something about this conflict Poland with European Union, because there is very things, and after I will maybe ask about all these details, but also about this. What do you think about this conflict, Poland and European Union?
I don't think it's a conflict, not a serious one. It's just a quarrel at the table, and it's a family affair. And in a family, people sometimes have disagreements, and sometimes the arguments are heated. But in the final aftermath, things get cooled down, and everything gets back on track. So that's not anything serious, in a sense that there is no conflict or nothing. There are no conflicting points that could lead to any major changes. But perhaps before I go to that, I'd like to add a few things about Donald Tusk, because you just said that he used to be a prime minister, and that is, of course, the case. But he has always been one of the most important people in Polish politics since the late 80s or the beginning of the 90s. And he was a prominent figure of the liberal camp. And at the beginning, he used to present himself as a social liberal, and later just as a liberal. And now I'm not even sure whether he still uses this adjective to describe himself or his political profile. He has always been very close to the German conservatives, something very typical for many Eastern European leaders. For example, another example of such person is the prime minister of Bulgaria. Well, not the current prime minister, but the prime minister that stepped down in April in Bulgaria, Boyko Borisov, who also presents himself, by the way, as a liberal or center right wing person, and he has been appointed at one point to be the leader, the chairman of the European Council. And this was done, or this happened, with the help of the German conservatives, and in particular with the help of Angela Merkel. And we know from current history, that political history of Eastern Europe, that whomever Angela Merkel happens to like, they have a long and happy career. Now, probably things are going to change since she's stepping down, but the fact that Donald Tusk wants to take power is another statement that I'm not quite certain, which you made, which I'm not quite certain is exactly the case. I think that the previous two terms, that is between 2009 and 2007 and 2015, when that was the period when Donald Tusk was the prime minister of Poland. And I think that this period was very stressful and extremely tiring for him. And I think that he had hoped that the trip to the European this vacation that he was getting through Angela Merkel, through Angela Merkel's with Angela Merkel's help to be the president of the European Council, where he had, the great prerogative of opening and closing the session of this body. I think he had hoped that it's the beginning of his retirement, and unfortunately, the European liberal camp, so to say, doesn't really have any better caters. So I think that it's not really his choice that he wants to go back to Polish politics and become a prime minister or take power, but he was probably either talked into that or forced straightforwardly to go back to Poland and to try and be the noble knight on the white horse who is going to save the Polish democracy. And wanting it or not, he had to do this. And he is trying his best. I'm absolutely sure that this is the case. Unfortunately, Donald Tusk is terribly worn out as a political figure, as a politician, as a symbol, if you like. And despite the fact that the most recent demonstration that we spoke right before going live about, which was held on Sunday, was it Sunday or Saturday? Last weekend, anyway, in the center of Warsaw, it did gather about around 50,000 people, maybe a little more. Of course, the organizers claim that it was 100,000 or even more than that, but I don't really think that in this area more than 50,000 people would fit, maybe 70,000. But I think it makes sense to point out here that this is the maximum that they are able to mobilize. And in the past, over the last 6 years, which is the time span of the rule of law and justice, which are the opponents of Donald Tusk, a right-wing Catholic fundamentalist party, and that during their reign, the last 6 years, larger demonstrations did happen. I mean, we had demonstrations exceeding 100,000 people on numerous occasions in Warsaw and in other cities as well. And I'm not talking only about the women's strike protests, because we're talking about those from the previous year, as well as those from 2016. But there were more demonstrations, like in the defense of the independence of the judicial system, and so on and so forth. Considering that this is the maximum, I think that it was not so much to demonstrate anything to anyone. It was rather to try and assess what are our resources, whom we can count on, how many people we can count on, how many people we could potentially mobilize in a moment favorable for us, that is, for them. And I don't know whether they are satisfied with this, but that was absolutely, for sure, the only reason, or at least the only rational reason I can think of for calling this demonstration. Because it is clear to any person that pays any attention to what is going on in the Polish public sphere, that no poll exit is really possible, at least not at this stage. First of all, we have to take into consideration that because people like to make this comparison. Oh, but Britain left, so Poland can leave as well. Well, first of all, Poland is not Britain. Britain is the fifth or the fourth, or maybe the sixth largest economy in the world. So, to even compare it with Poland in terms of their possibilities and their agency in terms of foreign policy and geopolitics, if you like, simply makes no sense. If had there been any real attempts to actually carry out exit, then I think one telephone call from the American embassy would suffice. And they would just say, hey, guys, don't get carried away. No one would simply allow Jaroslaw Kaczynski to remove Poland from the structures of the European Union. He's way too weak. He's also way too stupid. I mean, he really is an ignorant person. And the only traction that this topic, this subject can get is when Kaczynski, the leader of Law and Justice and the most important politician in Poland, the kind of petty dictator of the internal political process in Poland, it only gains traction when he wants to use it for internal purposes. And that's something that he's very good at, despite his ignorance and despite his, political profile and I don't know, all kinds of moral things about him that I don't like. But he is pretty good at exploiting themes like that for internal political purposes. And he actually has only one central political purpose, which is to destabilize the society emotionally. And it happens all the time. I mean, we've had all kinds of scapegoating. We had the LGBT people, we had the women, we had abortion, we had the Russians, we had the Germans. Now it's the EU, and but we had Lukashenko is still on the agenda, right? So you can you could. It's just another chapter in the same book. Like, we're going to put those poor people, the Polish society, the Polish electorate, those people that are interested in what's happening in the public sphere, we're going to put them on this rusty swing, and we're going to swing it once again, back and forth until everybody, can't stand it anymore and fall on the ground and go to sleep for a week, a month, or something like that, until they can come up with some new outrage. Or something super divisive. And the fact that Donald Tusk organized this demonstration, regardless of what I said earlier, that they were definitely trying to see what is the scale of their influence on the society, or at least on the active minority in the society, in the Polish society. They are also doing this because they have no response to no logical, no rational, no political response to all those nonsenses that Kaczynski keeps feeding to the public. The only thing they can do is they can cater into the same division. That is, if Kaczynski comes up tomorrow scapegoating some social group, then immediately the civic platform, that is Donald Tusk's party, is going to either pretend or, to some extent, maybe genuinely defend them, and you're going to have the hardliners, for right-wing hardliners from Law and Justice and some other right-wing organizations to the right of Law and Justice supporting the government. And it's not always that easy, but this is more or less the schema. This is how it works. So this is it. They had the demonstrations. The demonstrations are now a part of the recent history. By the next week, everybody is going to forget about those demonstrations. No one's going to even mention them. I think I find it very irresponsible on the part of the leftist politicians who decided to also cater into this hysteria. I think they should know better. It doesn't take a seasoned politician or a person holding a PhD on European affairs to know that, first of all, Poland, or any other country for that matter, cannot be kicked out of the European Union. This doesn't happen. There is only one possibility for a country to leave the European Union according to the treaties, which is if it chooses to leave itself. And this was the case of Great Britain. And even for Great Britain, it wasn't really an easy task, as all of us probably remember, to actually depart from the European Union. So for Poland, it would be rather impossible. And most certainly at this stage, there would be nobody actually supporting this, because Law and Justice, despite the fact that the Western media like to portray this party as Eurosceptical or anti-European or something like that, and the Polish media, some of them, they even try to depict this party as a pro-Russian party, which is a complete nonsense and some kind of cognitive disaster, because if there is anything that you can say about their foreign policy and about their profile, is that they got us accustomed to be America's, that is United States, puppets in a very overt manner. I mean, they were not even trying to hide that. They were openly trying to just become a sort of viceroys for the United States here in Poland, and they still are to a large extent, despite the fact that they prefer Trump to Biden. So they are not an anti-European Union party. They are not even Eurosceptical. I would like to perhaps remind our viewers that the twin brother of Jarosław Kaczynski's twin brother, Lech Kaczynski, who used to be the president of the Republic at the time when the Lisbon Treaty has been signed. He signed it, so it's really a meaningless concept to put forward that Law and Justice is a party that wants Poland to depart from the European Union. On top of everything, I want to say that I think a week or maybe 2 weeks prior to this scandal, artificial scandal that erupted in Poland and around Europe, the Politburo of the Law and Justice Party actually passed a resolution that there can be no talk of any poll exit. So, it really makes no sense. And I think on the day when this demonstration occurred, I'm talking about the one from last weekend, headed by Donald Tusk. I think on the same day, Jarosław Kaczynski went somewhere to the country to meet some representation of Polish farmers, and he was promising them that they will be getting more money from the EU. I don't think that this is a sort of statement from a politician that wants to actually make Poland leave the EU. So all those things said, I can just conclude that on its face, it's simply ridiculous to speak of any kind of poll exit. And just to sum up, no one would allow Kaczynski to do anything like that. Kaczynski himself is totally against this idea, and nothing in internal politics in Poland happened against the will of Kaczynski. Third, it's just part of the strategy of the currently ruling right wing to create artificial divisions in society that they can later exploit for some kind of political short-term or long-term goals of their own. So that's pretty much it. There will be, and there is no poll exit. I'm only surprised, and I just want to stress that once again. Well, maybe not surprised, because it's not surprising yet. It is disappointing that the politicians of the left decided to stand together with those people from the Civic Platform, Donald Tusk and all the rest of the gang, and to defend the European Union. And I'm also perhaps, again, not surprised, but I'm disgusted by the level of this hysteria. I live in Poland. I've lived in Poland for the last 20 something years, and I've seen a lot of hysteria here. But this thing is just as artificial as nonsensical and kitschy. Like, those screams, like those like, oh my God, like now we're going to leave the European Union, the world's going to end, this is the end of times, this is just, the most apocalyptic moment in Polish history. Like, this is something that is very difficult to bear with on the very aesthetical level, if you like. So yeah, it was a terrible spectacle. I'm glad I was able to stay away from it.
Okay, I would like to say that I am agree with you that Kaczynski don't want to make Polexit, but I am not agree with you that these things is artificial. And I think that there is the one question. It is the conflict between the Poland and the Commission European, or the people who are in the headquarters of the European Union. And the Europe is not united because the Donald Tusk wants to present the scenario that all Europe is united and there is only one Poland ruling by Kaczynski, which is against Europe. It's not like this. And we have the situation in France, for example, that we have the Eric Zemmour. He is the extreme right candidate for the president. Now the sondage give him that he will go to second round, and in second round against Macron he will have 45%. So 45% of French population support Eric Zemmour. And 1 week ago, Eric Zemmour said that in this conflict between Poland and European Union or Commission European, he supports Poland. He said "Vive la Pologne" and stuff like this. Because, for example, we have the question of the of law. Which law is important in Poland? Is this the most important law in Poland? It is Polish law, it is Polish constitution, or the European law in Poland is more important than Polish law?
Well, but that's clear. I mean, that's clear, and that has been made clear many times. So let me just answer this question very briefly, okay? Because if you read the Polish constitution, not that it's it's something to to read before going to sleep, but you just might want to go through it. And there is an article. There's one article there. I think it's the 91st article, which explicitly says that the most important law in Poland is the constitution. Then come the international treaties, and then there are the Polish. Then there's the Polish law. Okay, so that's number one. And number two, I want to say that this question that was formed. I even don't remember who asked this question, but to the Constitutional Tribunal, which provoked the whole hysteric reaction, because perhaps we should have began with this in a sense that the Polish Constitutional Tribunal, some, I don't know, 10 days ago, was it, or 2 weeks ago? I'm sorry, I'm very bad with chronology, but quite recently came up with something that is widely treated as a verdict, as some kind of decision. And it was no decision. It was an interpretational resolution. That's what it's called. So it really changes absolutely nothing. It's just an opinion, a legal one, of course, but it's just an opinion. Nothing can be changed and nothing can be done with a reference to this particular opinion. Okay, so it was just flexing muscles, nothing else. And this, to claim that this kind of document, this kind of interpretational resolution could be a source of a serious conflict that could lead to Polexit, that makes absolutely no sense, like legally, philosophically, politically, administrationally, like from wherever you want to look at it. So look, right after Poland joined the European Union in 2004, or maybe it was 1 year later, but sometime then, a question was formulated to the Constitutional Tribunal, which at the time was headed by a judge named Stempien, who is a fervent opponent of law and justice today. And he had to come up with a very similar resolution, and he did. And it says clearly in this resolution that should there be a conflict between an international treaty and Polish law, then there are only 3 or 4 options. One option is that if this law, if this international regulation contradicts the Polish constitution, then we can either amend the constitution, ask the party or the other party or parties that were signing those treaties to perhaps change the formulation of to change the regulations in that particular treaty, or we can well, there were 2 other possibilities. I can't remember exactly. One other possibility, and one of course of those 4 or 5 was that we can leave the European Union should this be the case. So it was obvious. Everybody knows what do you do and how do you go about legal conflicts like that. On top of everything, I want to tell you that the Polish constitution was amended, to my memory, at least once, pretty much right after Poland joined the EU, because the Polish constitution banned extradition of Polish citizens to other countries, and this had to be changed. And by the way, because now people like to say that the law is broken, the rule of law is totally smashed, like there is no rule of law in Poland, right? But wait, let me just give you this anecdote, okay? Now, how did we get to know that the Polish law contradicts, that the Polish constitution in this respect contradicts the treaties that Poland had signed to join to become part of the European Union? Well, it wasn't actually the first, it was the 5th or the 6th person that was on trial and was to be extradited to a foreign country. And only the lawyer of the 6th person, after the first 5 were extradited, noticed actually that there is something like this in the Polish constitution, that, hey, you cannot, according to the Polish constitution, extradite any Polish citizen to a foreign country. And it's only then, after a couple of times, it did happen, okay? It's only then that they had to do those political things, like they had to amend the constitution. Everybody agreed that they're going to do that. So obviously there is no problem of any legal nature. And the fact that the Polish pro-European wannabe liberal circles present it as something extraordinary is simply a manipulation, okay? And by the way, the same goes, this Eric Zemmour, I have no idea of him. I heard that he is some kind of terrible far-right extremist or something like that. I really have no knowledge of him. But if he says something like that, then he doesn't know what he is talking about. Obviously, there is a conflict in the European Union between the neo-traditionalist right and between the liberal right. That's for sure, of course. And the fact that people like Ursula von der Leyen or probably Macron and some people like I forgot the name of this pitiful guy that's constantly going after Poland and after Kaczynski.
From Belgium?
From Belgium or from the Netherlands. I forgot his name. Anyway, so he's so those people. I mean, I'm talking about like some liberal, figures, important figures in European politics. Obviously, for them, it was also a chance, to rage against those who want to, split the European Union and are against democracy and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I guess for everyone, for all of those parties, it was a convenient situation, and they used it to the maximum, but trust me, it's just going to be there for a while and it's going to go. Like they really have uh, bigger problems. And I think that at one moment they will just notice that they cannot really win by simply portraying Kaczynski as some kind of evil. Like he's evil, okay, that's true, but just by portraying him like that, that's not going to help them win elections in Poland.
I am agree with you that Kaczynski, he is a crazy guy. But I think that in European Union, people who are in charge also they are crazy, and the Yanis Varoufakis, who was the minister of something economy in Greece in 2000,
Finance.
finance, yes, in 2015, he negotiated with Greece in many times with European Union. And after many times, he said that these people they wanted to destroy Greece. They wanted to make Greece in the knees. That they because the people in Greece wanted to be a little independent. They the reaction of the leaders of Europe was not proportionally. In few days there was something with money that every citizens of Greece can take only 60 euros per week or something like this. And they make a lot of economic pressure to Greece population, and this economic pressure changed the politic of Syriza and Tsipras. And I think that this example showed that this economic pressure is a very, very strong tool. It's very dangerous. And there is the question of money, because if there's something in law, constitution, people don't care about this. But the real problem is money for the rebuilding of European economy, and many European countries already have this money, and Poland all the time wait for this money. And there are people in Netherlands or other countries who say that because Poland is authoritarian country or blah blah blah, we now we they will don't get this money. And I think that it is possible that this solution because of this example of Greece.
I think that this is not so much possible this time because we are talking about a huge loan that Poland is going to have to pay back. Like we're not talking only about Poland; we're talking about the entire European Union. Because what happened before before this plan, reconstruction plan, or whatever it's officially called, was agreed upon, then all the countries, the governments of the respective countries in the European Union, they had to agree and to give the European Commission a new prerogative that is to take loans in the name of the entire community of all of the countries. That means that Poland is going to have to pay back, okay, because this is the situation. I mean, legally speaking, the European Commission took a huge loan that is going to be distributing to the various countries within the EU, and the countries will have to pay that loan back. So if Poland doesn't get the money but is forced to pay those loans, well, I think that is something that could trigger a real conflict. And if they would really do this, like they would they would not give Poland access to the money that Poland was lent to. I think this is a recipe maybe for some kind of Pol exit looming ahead of us. So I do not think that it could be the case. Now there is money which are linked to the question of the rule of law. Okay, because otherwise the rule of law doesn't really exist much in all those treaties. Okay, that are basic and fundamental to the creation and acceptance of other countries in the European Union. But quite recently, I think it was this year, I can't remember exactly when, I think spring maybe, that the Polish Prime Minister, Mateusz Morawiecki, representing the Polish government, agreed with other prime ministers and important figures from the countries of the European Union that there is going to be this link. I mean, the Polish government, via the persona of Mateusz Morawiecki, the prime minister, they agreed to this mechanism. Okay, and this is how this mechanism is in place, partially thanks to Poland agreeing to linking the budget, the budgetary installments, or whatever, the flow of money to respective countries. But this does not affect the reconstruction plan. That's something else. This is something that affects the major budget, which is agreed upon, the European budget, which is agreed upon, I think, every 3 or 4 or 5 years. I'm sorry, I don't follow this to the extent to remember all those dates and time spans. But this is something else. Okay, this is the next budget of the European Union, where the question of the rule of law is going to be considered in terms of who's getting the money and how much and when and so on and so forth. And this dispute continues, and it's parallel to this recent hysteria. This recent hysteria is just an outburst, but there is an ongoing dispute between the tribunal. Oh my God, what is the European Tribunal of Justice? I'm sorry, I don't those extravagant
Sure.
names of all the European institutions. The court in Luxembourg, I think it is. This European court, already a couple of months ago, if I remember correctly, or it must have been somewhere at the beginning of the summer, they ordered Poland to close down the disciplinary chamber of the High Court. Okay, so which is, again, I don't want to go into this, but it's like one of the leverages of Kaczynski and his justice minister Ziobro to control judges and the judicial system, judges and prosecutors, but judges mostly through this one, and to attempt to hijack the High Court. So this, and they said sometime in the summer, I can't remember exactly when, but they said, Kaczynski and Morawiecki, I heard them saying that the chamber, the disciplinary chamber, that is the root of that conflict, did not fulfill their expectations, and they might have to think of reforming it or taking it away altogether. So they seem to understand on that front, again, and this is a different budget, different money, and different front of conflict than the recent hysteria, which is not a conflict, it's just hot air. That's what it is. So they seem to be actually bowing to some of the demands, at least, of the European Union, and this is the most the most logical outcome. Like, the European Union asked them once, asked them twice, took them to court, enforced a verdict on them, and finally said that, hey guys, so you're not getting any money. So, but again, this is something that is to be linked to the next year big European budget, not to the money that are part of the loans, which are basically that's what the so-called reconstruction plan is. It's a conglomeration of loans. So Poland is going to get that money, I think, unless the bureaucrats in Europe they really want to punish Kaczynski and Morawiecki because they hate them so much. they want to punish them, and they might prolong it. Maybe, Poland isn't getting it. Many other countries, by the way, haven't gotten the money from this reconstruction plan yet either. So Poland is not the only one. And the explanation, by the way, which the European Union provides for this delay is some kind of bureaucratic shenanigan. It's something like some forms, some documents were not filled properly. So they're sort of trying to, had it been really that they want to threaten Kaczynski, they would have said so. Okay, what they're doing is they're saying that no, it doesn't have to do anything, or the alleged conflict between the European Commission and the Polish government. It's just that some formalities were not looked after. So and look, the question of Greece, again, this is a very large subject, and I think we could speak for another hour about this, but there is no comparison between Poland and Greece. The situation is diametrically different. And I think you give Yanis Varoufakis and this pitiful moron, what was his name, Alexis Tsipras, a little too much credit when you say that they negotiated tough with the European Union and they were not able to confront them. That's not exactly the case. According to my knowledge, at least, they never intended to actually confront the European Union. This is why they called for this idiotic referendum right before the negotiations were meant to start. And they were genuinely hoping to lose that referendum in order to be able to actually go and sign whatever the European Union offers them. They won this referendum, and it made the situation even more complicated for them. From my sources, and I have been in left politics for 23 years now. So from my sources, so to say, I know that that Syriza never really intended to take power, like most leftist groups around Europe. They never really intended to take power. They just wanted to run their own little show somewhere on the fringes. And once it turned out that they actually are going to be voted in with such a majority, those sources of mine that I mentioned, they said, and this is a quote, "I have never in my life seen people so afraid of taking power." So it's not really so much the pressure of the European Union, it's just the inability, ignorance, cowardice, and the regular nonsense that we know from the left, which has no backbone, let alone other body parts. It's not the same situation. Kaczynski is much tougher, if you like, than Alexis Tsipras, and he is able to be, how to say this, to endure a little more. Like, the European Union leaders, they're going to say all kinds of things about him, and he's going to just keep eating popcorn and drink champagne as long as he can disbalance the society in Poland emotionally to the extent that he can use it for his own political purpose, and that keeps happening, like, regardless of whatever the European leaders are saying. We've got all kinds of topics here on the ground which are exploited for this purpose, like those poor people dying on the Polish-Belarusian border, for example. But that's a whole different show, of course.
It is a pleasure to listen all your rational arguments, because I am not reading or watching the Polish media. So if sometimes I heard something, and in one place, second place, in Gazeta Wyborcza, after in some leftist city internet, and I have impression that there is something big, because everybody are agree with that something is big. and your argument is that it's only show. There is a question for you, Aris Plugis, but maybe it is not bon pronunciation. Hello, comrades, greetings from Latvia. And one question, do you think it is juridically possible to reform European Union so Poland do not have to leave? Can EU become socialist?
I have no idea. I think that, and I don't have a solid opinion on that. At least not a strong opinion. I find many arguments of the people who claim that the European Union can be reformed from within. But I find a lot of convincing arguments on the side of those who claim that the European Union has proven to be unreformable on many occasions. And quite honestly, I really cannot say for sure whether it's like, for now, to me, for now, it doesn't seem like it can be reformed to an extent that it's going to become socialist or anything like that. It doesn't seem to be the case. The leaders of the European Union are obsessively neoliberal, and they are really sometimes rocking it like it's 1997 or something like that, not like 40 years later or 30 years later. So I think there's a big problem politically. There's an enormous intellectual stagnancy in the European Union, or to put it in other words, the European politicians are getting increasingly stupid, and they, it's like getting more and more visible. So I think it is possible that the European leaders are not going to be able to sustain, to endure the pressure that's piling up geopolitically and economically, and we can see that already with the rising prices of gas, for example, something absolutely extraordinary and a completely and totally EU's self-inflicted wound, and also a legacy partially of the British participation in the European Union. But again, that's a whole other show probably. Yet I just want to say that there are so many huge crises ahead of us, and provided how the European Union is dealing with the coronavirus crisis, that is very lousily. I'm, you know, I'm thinking that when the serious tectonic moves begin, then something could happen, something could emerge, some kind of spontaneous cross-European project that could derail the European Union from this current neoliberal path, and perhaps something then could happen. But this is just a speculation. And I wish I was able to say something like, well, the European Union is unreformable, most likely, so we should do. And, if we had mass organizations, left wing, all over Europe, that would collaborate and that would have a solid political platform, then I would say, yeah, let's go, let's leave the European Union and let's build the United Socialist States of Europe or something like that. But the fact of the matter is that we do not have such a capacity, and calling for the European Union to be dismantled or for the European Union to be abandoned by Poland are not very serious, and we're just gonna have to put up with this for for the coming period, hoping, and some of us acting also, uh, to to create some kind of alternative political center that could challenge the structure, the political structure of the EU, and then probably we will see whether it is reformable, whether it could offer some flexibility or not. But as long as there is no one challenging the European Union, we will probably never know for sure.
There is a question of Cyril Jakubowski. Let's assume that Poland left EU. What could be economic consequences? Would it be similar to what is happening in UK?
I think it would be worse because the UK, as I said in the beginning of the program, is the sixth or fifth largest economy in the world. So for them, everything that happened there and occurred there uh, is would have occurred here had Poland left the European Union. I don't know, 10 times more intense probably, or 20 times more intense, or something like that. Not necessarily the very same problems like with gas, for example, right? But absolutely, I think that would be very, very difficult. But I'm not trying to say that it's not possible to organize it in a manner that that would prevent those things from happening, and that would prevent the occurrence of all those problems. I think that what that should be or could be possible, but for that you need seasoned politicians. I mean, you need diplomats, you need cadres, you need people who are capable of making great things, okay, and leading. And we don't have anyone like that. So when I come to think that Kaczynski or I don't know, Tusk or whom, or I don't know, someone else, right, from the Polish parliament or outside the parliament, but within the political elite, would be taking us out of the European Union, I want to reach out for my revolver, not because I love the European Union, but I just don't want to go through something like this. I can barely imagine what it would be like if the Polish politicians start dragging out Poland of the European Union. This would be a disaster. I'm telling you that.
Yes, but do you think that it is possible other scenario that the multinational from West, from Germany, from France, they invested a lot of money in Poland. There are many factories which now is very important for the Western economies. Also, there is the investments in the infrastructure in Poland. And is it possible other scenario that when the government which was chosen in the democratic election by the Polish people all the time will have problems with European Union, there will be some intervention, military intervention, or the threat of this military
No.
intervention to change Poland to something like general gubernia in the time of war. For example, we see all this politic of NATO that they occupied Iraq, they occupied Afghanistan because of tension of the leaders with this country. One day they see, okay, we finished the discussion, we will occupy you, because I always have in my mind the history of Europe, that Western Europe countries, it is imperialist countries which are not, they have all this history of the conquering the world, the bombardments, the stuff like this, and they can't lose Poland because of the geographic reason, but they can't also accept the situation that the Polish government is independent.
Well, yeah, first of all, the Polish government is not independent. The Polish government is totally dependent on the United States of America and wants to be dependent, and it sees its only its only role, meaningful role, as being what they are, which is viceroys between the metropolis of Washington and the colonial areal of Poland, to put it symbolically. So they are not independent, and Poland is not independent. Poland is doing things, same as Hungary, for example, is doing things which I, find morally impermissible, and I find them politically bad. But the European Union leaders, they don't care so much about morality or politics. It's just that they seem to have a psychological problem with this. I mean, they are not used to someone standing up to them, regardless of whether it's for for domestic political purposes or for some other reasons. So this is something strange for them, and because it's strange, they don't know how to confront it. They have no political ideas because they cannot really, they cannot really offer anything better. Like if Kaczynski is so bad and you're so great, then offer something and make people vote against Kaczynski, right? But you can't. They can't do that. So that's why they have to go for all those hysterical PR nonsense. And I think it's totally out of out of the equation that Poland would be invaded by Germany or NATO or anything like that. I think it would for this to happen, it would take much more independence and real independence, not just occasional conflicts here and there, and not just reform of the judicial system or reform that the European Union and part of the Polish judiciary doesn't like. I don't like it either, by the way. But it would take the confronting the real centers of power. That is economic power. That means, let's just assume for a while, let's just fantasize that some left-wing socialist party that is openly anti-capitalist and has an agenda, means that it knows what kind of program it wants to work on and to transition from capitalism to socialism, because many parties, they posture to be anti-capitalist, but they have no idea what to do once they take power. But let's assume something like this happens in Poland. And if this is something that would actually endanger the class balance, then things could get really ugly. Again, I'm not sure that it would take an army to invade Poland, but then things could be really, really difficult. But not now. Now it's just a circus, and this is, decreasingly funny circus. So I really think that we can just leave the question of military occupation by the Bundeswehr or by any other army aside for the moment. And also, which army is going to do that? Like NATO is, at least officially, it's not the Euro, and NATO will not invade a NATO country. That would be also a precedent, right? So this is, and it's not officially linked to the European Union in a sense that, okay, the NATO headquarters is in Brussels and the European Parliament is in Brussels and the European Commission's headquarters is there. But that doesn't mean that, there's a hotline between all those places. So I don't think that the European Commission can decide at one point that, oh, yeah, we're going to go and invade Poland because they're irritating us by being too independent. That's not how it works. They only recently started discussing, by the way, this neoliberal extremist, exquisite Macron. He mentioned it a couple of times in the recent years that he wants to create a European army. But even if it does get created, then it's probably going to take, I don't know, 10 years, a decade at least, before the first team is actually put together. And like, come on, I mean, can you even imagine a European army like a European Union army. It's such nonsense. I mean, when I come to think about it, I believe that a group of scouts, if they are armed from Belarus, could probably, confront a European army on the battlefield. So I don't think it's possible for anything like that to happen in Poland.
There is something in your camera, I think. Some.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
Uh,
that. Let me see.
oh,
Oh,
now
okay,
it's
it's
better.
good. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you for. I think that this subject we can finish. I
Sure.
only I can only read the comments of Comrade Hellas. He's the YouTuber from Greece, and he makes some comments before. He now have wrote five difference between UK and Poland. So UK GDP per capita is $40,000, Polish is 50,000, 40,000, 15,000. The UK kept part of its tariffs, the only EU country allowed to. Three, the British pound is way stronger than the Polish zloty. Four, the UK gave more money than it took by the EU, Poland not. Five, UK also trades with the US, Canada, Australia, etc. Poland only has the EU.
That's not
Uh,
exactly the case, but anyway, it's correct in general. I agree with the comrade that posted this comment.
okay, I wanted to finish, but there is one question, the latest. So after the question, we can finish.
Mhm.
Cyril Jakubowski, is one unified socialist communist party of EU its good idea?
I think that any socialist slash communist party that would be a viable organization is a good idea. And whether it would be just regional, like, I could easily imagine having I mean, easily imagine because I do have imagination and I can fantasize, but otherwise that I'm not trying to say by that there are conditions or good conditions for this to occur. But I'd love to see a conglomeration, okay, that would call itself socialist, or even if it doesn't call itself socialist, but it wants something like, to confront the capitalist system. That would be pan-European. That would be fantastic, But I, what I can do and what I feel is somewhere within the reach of my within the scope of my activities is to put together as many meaningful leftists from Eastern Europe, because uh, this is a place which I know, which I'm familiar with, culturally, politically, socially, civilizationally, if you like, and this is something that I'm pushing for. I don't think it's an easy thing, and I don't think it's going to be a quick process, but that's something I can imagine easier than a whole pan-European, party that is going to represent all the nations of Europe and all the societies and the entire working class of all the countries. But I'd welcome such a project, and uh, if it only comes to life, I will definitely support it. But whether it's possible or not, there are people who are going to tell you that there's only one thing impossible, and I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to swear. But there are people who are going to tell you that only very small amount of things are gonna are possible, because we have to focus on the current situation and the objective factor. So look, I really don't know. I think it is theoretically possible, but I think it's very difficult to imagine how are we going to go about it, provided that what is the left's biggest problem in Europe? It's the ideology. Like, they have no idea what to do. You know, they they basically, for lack of better ideas, they just pick randomly some liberal cliches and they extrapolate into it and try to pretend that it's some kind of ideology. And it's not an ideology, but it's something weird. It's something like a semi-religion. Take wokeism, for example, right? The left is very woke. And, and it has no political substance, or very little, if any. So, you know, if we want to discuss seriously about political projects in one country, in a region, or in the on the entire continent, then we first have to clean our ideological backyard. I mean, what are we here for? And I'm not talking about myself or Miha. I know what we are here for. We know what our role is. We know what we can do. We know the extent of the stretch of time and possibilities that we can invest in leftist commentary and journalism and so on and so forth, right? But if we want to build a party, then we got to have a program for that party, because we like, who is going to run on slogans like, we're gonna increase your minimum wage, or we're gonna, I don't know, build more kindergartens. Like, it's like, now Law and Justice does things like that in Poland. They don't build more kindergartens. That's not the case. But otherwise, they did make some social transfers. So, like, what is your postulate if you're a leftist and anti-capitalist or social democrat, for that matter, even? Okay, like, what do you want to do? What is the difference between you and some Republican-oriented conservatives like Law and Justice, that are prepared, to give out some money, because capitalism can accommodate that. It's not such a big problem. It's difficult, but it can accommodate it. Like, some billions here, some billions there. Okay, this time not to the military industry, this time somewhere else. This time we give something to the people to appease them. It's not a big deal for capitalism, unless it's in some kind of severe crisis, which is, of course, ahead of us. But that's the fundamental thing. I think before we start discussing any possibility for any major projects, we got to ask, what is this project gonna be there for? And if it's going to be there for replacement of capitalism with socialism, then how is this going to happen exactly? I hope I answered the question. I'm sorry for all the nuances.
I can add that it's very difficult to unify the Polish left, and talking about unify the European left without possibility from 20 years unifying Polish left is
absolutely. You're totally right. I mean, what are we talking about? We were only able to unify. I mean, not myself, but those people. Let's say the three major leftist organizations. One of them isn't and has never been leftist, but let's just, for the sake of argument, they formed a parliamentary coalition and an election coalition before they entered parliament in 2019, right? I'm talking about the Razem Party, the DLA, former DLA, Democratic Left Alliance. Now they're called something like New Left, or I don't even follow that. And then there was this party formed around Robert Biedroń called Spring, right? Wiosna. So, and Spring is exactly the element that I think has never been a leftist one, but that's, again, another story. But those three organizations, they did gather, not because they were so smart or because they finally learned from history that there's got to be an agreement, okay, and that sectarianism is stupid and always losing, on the losing side, but because one of the elements of this troika, okay, one of these elements had wanted previously to join the Civic Coalition, which is a coalition of right-wing parties led by the Civic Platform Party of Donald Tusk. And they were rejected. And because they were rejected, they had no other choice but to speak to other left-wing organizations. And they formed something that won, I can't remember how much was it, 12 or 13% in 2019. And they entered the parliament. So was it 19? Sorry, maybe I'm mixing up the dates. I'm so bad with chronology. I'm sorry
Yes,
about that.
1919.
19. I'm
The
so embarrassed about
Partia
it.
Razem make a video that they are 2 years in parliament.
Yeah, that's here's my question. What have you done, guys? So you've been there for 2 years. What have you done? That's like no.
There is some critic of you. It's Jotazet Jeden wrote, in Graz, a communist won major election on the idea of social support, building communal houses. So
Very
what
good.
Bojan Stanislavski is saying is just not true.
Okay, I'm not sure what is not true. I think this is a very specific. This is a very specific postulate. We're going to build more houses, more. I understand they're going to be not private, but they're going to be owned by the local authority, or I don't know, by whatever. But it's not something that is particularly radical. And of course, that's great. I'm all for building those houses, and if that works in Graz, that's fantastic. And I think the more the better, and the more communists are elected to local parliaments or councils or whatever, I support it. But like, how does it speak to the question of organizing the left in Europe? Like, it's just another chapter of someone doing something somewhere, which is great. I support that, but that's not anything that we can base ourselves on in order to build a pan-European party that is going to change the nature of the European political and economic nature of the European Union. And this is, in this context, I said that I can't quite seem that it's possible to have this. Otherwise, I support that. Look, even this Razem party, which is a terrible party, I'm going to probably vote for them, okay? Because, so, like, same, I would vote for communists in Graz. If we had communists in Warsaw, I'd vote for the communists in Warsaw. But this is all just, this is just it. Like, this, without ideological thing, we can just count on some small victories here and there, and that's great. But that's just it.
Okay, listen carefully now what I am reading. Aris Plugis, excellent commentary and analysis. Thank you for this conference, comrades. I also listened to Neoliberal Normie podcast. Nowhere near deep thought like here.
Thank you. I feel flattered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So,
thanks, and it was a pleasure and an honor to be on Rebirth of Communism.
And if you want more stuff like this, it's the Barricade channel. In the description you can find link. And
right, thank you very much.